everybody. Welcome to Drupal in Migration in 0 lines of code. Yes, so this is the link to the page. I've got slides up here, and you can tweet if you want to migrate DD and MidCamp or MadCamp or whatever. We've got all the tweeters. Come on in. I haven't really started yet. I just started introducing you. Okay, I'm going to start for now. So my name is Avi Schwab. You might know me from such films as the keynote this morning or last year's Drupal MidCamp. But I'm AJ Schwab on Twitter, and I'm a web project manager at the University of Chicago. Froboy on Drupal.org, so feel free to ping me afterwards in any of these ways. So, I am going to talk about migrations. And in Drupal, we've had some different ways to migrate sites throughout the years. So in this talk, I'm going to talk about migrate with a capital M, being migration with the Migrate module. And not migrate with lowercase m, which I will consider migration with the old style Drupal, 5 to 6 to 7 upgrade path with the database and everything in place and just updating with the core update path. So that's a great thing, and I'm going to talk a little bit about the differences and then go into things. I'm going to try and get to do a little bit live at the end so you can see things, but in 20 minutes, it's going to be a lot to go through, so get going. So, Drupal 6 to 7 migration. So the lowercase migration is still a pretty good way to do things in some cases. So if you have a site that's not too active, you can clone the database, you can work on it for a while, work in your local environment and not worry about your content getting too far out of date. You can still go through that method, and that'll work perfectly fine. This, however, might be a problem if your site is really high traffic, you've got content that's updating daily, or you've just got a really, really complex site that may take a while to rebuild. So this is where Migrate module comes in. Migrate gives you the ability to import new content throughout the development cycle. So once you get things in place, you can run the migrations over and over and over and always be pulling new data down. It allows for easy refactoring of your content. So if you've got a content type that you did one way in Drupal 6 and now Drupal 7 is totally different, you can, as long as you can match up those fields, you can rework the way your content is put together pretty easily. It also allows migration from non-Drupal sites. So if you've got a database anywhere, there are lots of modules to do this. You can do WordPress, you can do other things. It's got Drush integration for you folks who are doing Drush. If you don't know anything about Drush, you should. It's pretty great. And another thing, Migrate is going to be hopefully part of Drupal 8. This is a link in the slides, but there's a whole initiative to get Migrate module and its components into D8 core so that coming into D8 from any other site will be much easier. One other thing I left out here, you can migrate from D7 to D7. So one of the use cases that I had in one of the last sites that I was doing, who's used backup and migrate before? Who's ever tried to partially restore part of a backup? Yeah, it's not very easy. Migrate module lets you do that really, really simply. You can basically take your backup, take some pieces out of it, and dump it into Migrate, and it'll restore things mostly well. I'm not going to talk about that, but if you want to know how to do that later, come talk to me. So it's a really easy format to migrate into lots of things, or migrate from lots of things into Drupal 7 or Drupal 8. I'm going to focus on the D6 to 7 because that's what I've done a bunch of times, but this should apply pretty well to D8. So before you migrate, you need to get things ready. Migrate is not a replacement. So the old style migration process brought over all of your taxonomies, all of your content types. You brought things mostly in place. With migration, you still have to rebuild things yourself before you dump the data in. So migration with a lowercase m rebuilds all of the things. Migration with a capital M just moves content. So in preparing yourself, you'll go through the usual planning, prototyping, design process. There are lots of great sessions on that here and other places. I'm not going to talk about the whole design process, but make sure you plan things well before you get started. Next, once you've got your plan, you're going to build out your nodes and entities in the new site. So you're going to take your stock Drupal 7 install, build out your custom content types, any taxonomies that you have, and get everything, the framework of your site situated, so that you've got all of the containers ready for your content to come in. Next, you're going to make a rough field mapping from the old site to the new. So what this means is saying, the body content type of this node in my old site goes to the body field in this node. The intro field goes to the blurb field. The whatever file goes to this file. This term goes to this term. You can do this however you want. This doesn't need to be complicated. Do it on a whiteboard or a piece of paper. Just make sure you have a decent idea of what the structure of your old site is. So the terms, content types, fields, and what the structure of your new site is. If you're just a site builder, never doing code, you should still be able to get this together. Next up, you want to install some modules. So what we're going to talk about here is two modules in particular, Migrate module and Migrate D2D. So Migrate has all of the framework, and Migrate D2D brings this great UI in that makes it really easy to work on. So then you're going to enable stuff. So Migrate has Migrate module and a UI. D2D migration has itself and also a UI. So if you don't enable the user interface modules, you won't actually see anything when you're building the site. That's a common problem that people have. They'll enable one module but not the UI. Like if you've ever had views but not views UI, you're like, what do I do? So then once you have everything installed, your framework set up, your modules enabled, you're going to start building your site. Start your migration, sorry. So once you get into the admin, you're going to see a Migrate tab in the content section. And in this Migrate tab, there will be this wonderful import from Drupal button. That is the entrance to this magical world of Drupal to Drupal migration in the UI. So once you click on that, it's going to take you through a wizard that will connect to a database. So you have to decide whether you're going to migrate from a live site, which could be interesting, or you've pulled your live site down into a dev environment and you've got everything there. All you need is you need your database credentials, the database name, and the host that it's hosted on. And this will automatically connect and pull everything from that database down into this migration process. It's pretty amazing. So once you do that, I don't have screenshots here, but it's going to take you through step by step. Like I said, it'll connect to the database. It'll see all of the nodes, terms, or taxonomies, users, files, fields, and it'll take you through a process of starting the setup of those mappings. You should follow that process as best you can, but don't worry, because that is just setting the basis for what's to come. Once you get through that wizard, there's going to be two buttons. One is save, and one is save and run. You're just going to want to save them because we still want to tweak things later. If you're really ambitious, you could try save and run, but I've never had that work right off. You're always going to want to go in and work on things. So once you get through the wizard, you should see something like this. This is the task list. So it's going to have all of the pieces of your old database in this list. So you've got pictures, roles, terms, users, files, nodes. And now that the user interface knows a little bit about your old site, we want to map that to the new site. So, mappings. So on each task that we had here, you're going to click on the name of the task. And once you get there, you'll get an info screen. On the info screen will be a big edit tab. Like I said, each task has dependencies. So every piece of the site can be related to others. So articles have an author, and authors users have a role. So when we're importing content, we need to make sure that we import things from the least dependent to the most dependent. You can't import an article that has file references and user references if those files and users don't exist yet. So we've got to go through in the right order. So most of the time, the DDD UI wizard will put things in the right order. This is generally how it goes. So pictures are the kind of built-in user profile pictures. Roles really don't have any dependencies either. Then taxonomies, they're pretty straightforward. Users, files, and nodes. So this is basically in order of least complex to most complex. So I'm going to take you through these pretty quickly. So as I said, pictures, they don't really depend on anything. They're referenced by users, but they shouldn't have any dependencies. So this, you might go in and check the mappings, but you can just kind of ignore it. Roles, again, roles is pretty easy. It's just going to create the new roles in the site. Taxonomies, so each taxonomy is going to be brought in as a separate line in that migration. So you want to make sure that you've got the right source for the taxonomy. So each of these terms is going to come in under a parent. So you've got your tags, and the tags are under the parent tags. In the field mappings, there'll be a parent item there. The wizard should fill that out for you, but it's good to go in and check that out. Users, if you have any profile fields in users, you'll want to set those. So again, you'll get a big table with the name of the destination field and a drop-down for the source field. So I'll show you this in a minute, but you should just be able to pick the source in the drop-down and then say, email goes to email, first name goes to first name, last name goes to last name. So again, it's pretty straightforward point-and-click way of saying, here's this thing in the new site, map this old thing in the new site to this new thing. Files, there are a few settings in there, but you generally don't want to touch that too much. And then nodes gets a little bit more complicated. So nodes can have references to taxonomy terms. They can have references to files. This is an example of one of the node migrations, just a section of the node migrations that I have. You can see in here there's an image field, and that image field is mapped to the old image field. And I'm telling this last column is dependencies. So I'm saying use the old image field name and use this file migration that I did before to make that connection. There are a few options here. All of these options you see in the left column, they've got links in the descriptions. The people who put this together were really great, and every single one of those links goes to the documentation on the Migrate module. So if when you have questions and when you don't know what's going on, because it's a really, really complicated process, you can click on those links and it'll take you to the descriptions of the parts of the process. One of the weird things in file migrations, there are a few different ways to do it. The thing that I've found worked best in my cases is this migrate file FID option. So that basically says, instead of trying to pick up files one by one, just link the ID of the file that we migrated in the file migration to this. So it's like a file. It's just mapping it by reference instead of trying to import it in the file. There are a bunch of other options in here, whether you want to rewrite files when you're importing them, delete things, etc. Again, it gets complicated, but you can do it. So eventually, you will have each mapping set up. Then you can go through this task list one by one and import each of the tasks. So once you have the person mappings done, you can import the people. Then you can import the pictures, the roles, the terms. You can do it. You do it one by one, going down the list, and hopefully it'll work. Maybe it won't. Probably it won't. So when at first you don't succeed, there are a number of ways built into the UI to figure out what went wrong. In each of the tasks, there's a messages tab, and this is like the log for each section of the migration. So this is really important to go in. When things go wrong, you can come in and see what happened. There are a bunch of field types that are problematic. Field collections might be weird. Some other things, if you have any kind of more complex contrib stuff, might have problems migrating, and you'll have to deal with that. You might either just have to not do it with migration module, do it with something like feeds, or maybe write some code. So again, this works pretty well for core-ish stuff. Contrib stuff is, a lot of it works pretty well. The big stuff works pretty well. Other things, maybe your mileage may vary. There's a great other option in here called rollback. So when something goes wrong, you can roll back your changes. It is totally non-destructive to the rest of the site. So instead of just restoring from an old backup, you can just roll back the changes that you did, and then go into the settings, try again. You'll do this a lot. It's okay. That is the point of this process. You'll go through and have to iterate through the changes, trying to figure out, making sure that everything works, making sure that you have the fields mapped, making sure that there aren't fields that you missed. The migration, no matter how you do it, is a complicated process, and we're dealing with a lot of data moving between two really complex databases. So either way you do it, whether you just go through and write a whole bunch of code or go through the UI, it's going to take some time. So make sure you plan on that. And then finally, you can always dig into the documentation. There's a lot of documentation written on the Migrate module. It's all right here, but if you go to the Migrate module project page, there's a lot of stuff there. It's pretty dense. It takes some work to get through. It's definitely still written for coders, but if any of you goes through this process and wants to help improve that documentation, go for it. Be bold. And when Migrate just doesn't seem to have the tools that you want, there's also feeds. So this talk is shorter than I had originally planned. I was going to go through some feed stuff. There are lots of other resources on feeds, and it's really, really cool. So feeds, basically, if you haven't used it, allows you to suck up so instead of databases, feeds is mostly focused on CSVs and JSON, but I think it can do databases too. But feeds with feeds Tamper, which is a UI that allows you to modify the input that's coming in the process of importing it, is really, really powerful, and you can do a lot of things with it. So in some of my migrations that are more complicated, I've used Migrate to get the basic stuff in, and then feeds to get the more complex pieces. Because they're, either I want to do more data work on them. I've had sites with, in Drupal 6, the original content was really badly formed, and I wanted to break it up into pieces and do some work, and we put it into a spreadsheet, did some manual labor cleaning up the content, and then import it with feeds. So there's a lot of flexibility between these two tools. A pro tip I wanted to get in here that I've really enjoyed lately. With feeds, you can import, the easiest way to get data if you're just importing stuff is by uploading like a CSV. If you're working with something like Excel or Google Sheets, doing something, saving, downloading a CSV, uploading a CSV every time, especially if you're iterating through and trying to fix things, is really a tedious process. If you do stuff in Google Sheets, you can publish your sheet as a CSV to the web and get a unique URL for that. You can take that URL and paste it into feeds using the feeds HTTP fetcher instead of the CSV upload. And then anytime you make changes in that sheet, with new Google Sheets, it's published to the web within seconds. You hit the import button and it just sucks up the new CSV. It's amazing, it's magical. There's a Stack Overflow article here about how to get that URL because it's a little bit harder. Yeah.
Do you have to redo that every time you make an update, or just
no? You do that URL once, and then you just hit import. It'll change your lives. So we're close to time. Does everybody want to see this real quick? Yeah, you do. Say yes.
Yeah, sure.
So exit that.
I have to ship that together.
So, this is the Poke Dev server. So this is a migration that I had mostly finished, and then I had brought in some stuff additionally. So you can see these are some things that have already been finished. These are each of the tasks, and once you select them, you'll get some options here. So you can import or import in the background with Drush, rollback, and then there's some other stop, etc. In each of these tasks is where you set the things. So you can get an overview here, but then in edit, you can see the whole mapping. This is really, really scary. But like I said, you can either do it in code or you can do it in the UI. You just have to decide. This gives you a whole drop-down with the source fields. There's some values that you can set, and you can set sources from the, if you have dependencies. So you'll go into each of these, set lots of things, and then you can see messages if there are errors or just informational messages. So there are a lot of things here. It's really interesting and really, really powerful. So you should try it out. That is all the time we have. If you want to sprint, there are sprints on Sunday. Please join us for those. Yeah, sprinting is great, and we'll have lots of people to help you. If you've never sprinted before, you should really do it. Just being able to sit with somebody for a day and install Drupal and get somebody to help you through the issue queues is really, really amazing. I sprinted officially for the first time at camp last year, and it was a lot of fun. I didn't get a lot done, but I learned a whole lot. So, first time, you probably won't get very far, but second time is smooth sailing or something. So, please rate my talk on Joined In. Tweet me or come up to me at camp. I'll be here the rest of the time if you have any questions. And that's it. Thank you. Supposed to be out, right? Does anybody have any questions really quick?
Do you have any
No, I got till 1:30.
question, Joe?
Okay, yeah.
How the situation now and like help versions of service, right? Every time I get into the administration, like the dashboard, it's giving warning. It's already updated and they ask me to migrate to 7.33.
Okay.
My question is, can you use this migrate module to migrate to the higher version of
No, you don't need to use any module. You should just be able to update your code base and then update the database.
Just basically,
Yeah, go ahead.
No, you can update right in place. You just put the new code base right over the old stuff, and you should be good. Yeah. Other questions? After you make it back up. Yeah. John. Yeah.
is that available in the UI or is that?
No, so feeds Tamper will let you manipulate the data mid-migration. I don't know that the Migrate D2D has that yet. So if you want to do significant work on the data, you'll have to do that in code or in the database file. You had a question and then yeah.
Do you have any experience migrating from outside of Drupal, migrating files from outside of Drupal? Like, say, Cascade?
I haven't. I think it's possible. Again, like I said, Migrate has a lot of options, and as long as you can give it some kind of structured data, you can get things into Drupal pretty easily. So that might be something that you would need to write a Migrate script for, but it should be able to take it. In the background.
For complicated mappings, you can make use of Migrate classes of your own to do some really cool stuff.
Right. So you write those classes in code, and then D2D will reference them? Is that it?
That's what I'm trying to figure out. Is I usually just do it all in code,
Okay.
but is there a way to reference the UI to complement that? That
Yeah.
would be so cool.
I believe there is. I'm not totally sure what the process is, but I think Migrate D2D provides some framework back to the Migrate API, or the Migrate classes.
Someone said yes. How?
Yeah, so when you write your migration, it gets registered. So just when you go into the UI, you'll see your migration listed.
Okay.
And so like once you write it, you can go through the same process that he just showed you. But all of your sort of directives will be in your API that you wrote for your migration.
So you do it through the prepare kind of?
Yeah.
Okay.
But it would if you wanted to go through the whole UI workflow, you could do it that way, like write a migration and
Yeah, so you can get some of that information if you go into the view of the tasks. It gives you some information about the classes that are there, and you can set up those mappings there in code. Cool. All right, I think we're good.
What do you do? I had said it's migrated from 6 to 7, and then the old site is still getting content built in there. What do you do to move that over to later? Is this already migrated over to data?
Sure. Once you're like I said, the great thing about this, once you have a migration already done, you can just go back here and say import again, and all of the mappings are there. It'll respect anything that's in. One of the things you have to be careful about is if you changed content in the development site, this might overwrite it with content from the old database.
Will import everything again?
This will import everything again, I believe. Yes. I think there are some settings here. Oh yeah. There you go. There's an update button. So you can use it to can uncheck it to only import new content. It's magical. Cool.
I was going to say do it to a Drush.
Yeah, like this can all, the UI actually hooks into Drush. A lot of the time it just doesn't work at all, so you kind of need Drush to make things work, depending on the complexity. But, you know, there are definitely lots of things that you can't do through the UI. But the UI is there, and it's really powerful, so you can take advantage of it. Thanks, guys.